Talk. This is Angie, and I'm here with my sister Joy, and today we are going to be discussing the book Wuthering Heights. So Wuthering Heights, I'm guessing that most people have heard of it. Now, I don't know how many people have actually read the book, but it's a very famous book, and it was written by Emily Bronte, and she published it in 1847. So, Joy, I was thinking that this is probably the oldest published book that we've read.
Okay.
Don't
I was
you
thinking
think?
maybe Johnny Tremaine.
No?
Well, no, it was written about the 1700s, but it wasn't necessarily written.
No, I want to say that one was written like in the around the 40s or 50s.
Oh, you're right.
So I think this is one of the oldest
Ones we've
read.
talked about. Yeah, you're probably right.
And so when we first started Twin Talk, I was just going to let our listeners know real quick that this was one of the books I wanted to do right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Joy, I said, oh, good, we get to discuss Wuthering Heights because it truly is one of my favorite books. And then I thought, oh, no, we have to wait for October. Well, guess what? It's finally October.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so super excited that we're getting to discuss this. So this is a really good book for October because it has your ghost and it's kind of got that scary, eerie element to it. And you can tell I'm already...
a big scary house.
It's a big scary house. You can tell I'm already kind of gushing about this. And I was thinking all through this podcast, I'll probably be kind of gushing, but I can see people going, I don't get it. Kind of like with the Star Wars trilogy. I don't get people that are head over heels with Star Wars stuff, but that's kind of how I feel about this book.
Yeah.
Okay, so just as a summary, so to let everyone know what the book is about, Wuthering Heights is a gothic novel about greed, revenge, jealousy, ghost, and a love that defies both time and death. The story has no real hero. The leading man is a villain through and through, and the heroine is no angel. Wuthering Heights begins in the present, then flashes back 20 years to tell the haunting love story of Catherine Earnshaw and her Heathcliff. So, Joy, I've been excited to hear what you thought about the book, and I was just curious the whole time you were reading the book, what in the world was going through your head when you were reading this book?
Just how dark and depressing, and how much anger, and I really all through the book I kept asking myself, why do people love this book? Why is this book still around all these years later? Why have so many movies been made about the book? And all I can come up with is because it's not typical. It's the hero is, like you said, he's a villain. Or no, I'm sorry, he's not the leading character. Heathcliff is not a hero. He's a villain. We see why he is the way he is. Catherine, like you said, is no angel. So maybe it's because back then and even today, the main characters that we read about all through it are not your typical leading characters. That's all I can come up with. It was something new and fresh and different for the time.
Okay, and I have to... I'm just remembering. I remember you called me one night while you had just listened to some of it, and you said, "What the heck?" You said, "These people are crazy."
They are. I feel like a lot of the characters are absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
I know they're not real people, but I feel like from some of the research I've done, some of them are based on real people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Are you talking about maybe...
The drunken brother.
Okay. So the author in real life had a brother who was an
alcoholic.
And maybe
and that would be, is that Hareton? Or
Hareton would have been
I think it's based
brother.
on the Brontes brothers, what I'm thinking, for sure.
Totally agree, because anyone who lived with a drunk and knew what it was like, I could see that character being based on him. So did you think the book was difficult to follow?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. Yes, if that had been my first time to read the book, I would have been totally lost. But I've seen a movie. I've seen Wuthering Heights, the movie, and I've read a graphic novel on it. I've talked to you a little bit about the characters and the storyline. And then, of course, I've read the book. So having done all of those things combined, I'm starting to finally figure out who's who and what's what. But yes, there's so many characters, and because they're all related, it gets confusing.
Yes.
And I even have a handout. Angie printed out a family tree for me just so I could keep the characters straight as we go through this podcast, because it's tricky keeping up with who's who and who's related to who and all that good stuff.
And the reason I gave you that is because it's so important to understand who's who for the story to make sense. So overall impression, you think not typical.
Yeah, I almost want to use the word evil.
Evil. Okay.
There was so much darkness and anger and hatred and abuse. It almost has this evil feeling throughout it.
Okay.
I don't remember any light in it whatsoever,
Oh,
except for
okay.
maybe Catherine's daughter.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, personally for me, it is one of my favorite books, and I know some people probably would question this, but if I had to name my top 10 books, it would make my top 5.
Okay.
That is how much I like
So
this book.
explain to me
Well,
and our readers why.
actually-
what this whole podcast is you kind of trying to explain why you love the book so much.
And I did some soul searching because we're kind of jumping a little bit ahead here, so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay, so I do have a confession to make. I think I watched the movie first. Okay, so here's the problem with watching the movie first. It's Hollywood's version of Wuthering Heights. Okay, so honestly, when I first watched the movie, I thought that the book was about this passionate romance between Cathy and Heathcliff. And even after I read the book the first time, I truly don't think I understood the full implications of the characters. You know, in my mind, I was still trying to make him be this passionate hero in this book,
and
which
that's
where
what
he's not.
I found a little documentary on YouTube, and I sent it to you, and that's what that lady said. She grew up because of Hollywood thinking that, oh, Catherine and Heathcliff were this super romantic couple, and they loved each other so passionately.
I hate to cut you off, but you're doing a spoiler alert, so I'm getting ready to play the video clip.
Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't know that.
It's okay. Twin moment. She thought of the same thing that I was going to do.
But bottom line is, these movies are misrepresenting the book.
Yes.
They truly are misrepresenting who these people really were. And that's what I think. A lot of people think, oh, I love Heathcliff and Catherine, but they don't really have a clue what's going on.
Exactly. So Joy, as usual, has figured out my little scheme and what I'm going to do here. So actually, the name of the clip the video that she's talking about, it is called The Brilliant Bronte Sisters, and it is on YouTube, and it's very good. And I'm just going to play a small clip of it now.
When I was living in this road as a child, I spent a lot of time immersed in the fantasy world of the books that I got from the library. But my top favourite, especially in the film version, was Wuthering Heights.
Make the world stop right here. Make everything stop and stand still and never move again. Make the moors never change and you and I never change.
And this was my moors. I would run around being the wild child Cathy, calling for Heathcliff. Oh, I was so in love with him. He was my ideal man. Older and wiser, I realised that Hollywood had misled me. They'd left a lot out.
Wuthering Heights never was a sentimental love story, and Heathcliff is far from the rather soppy romantic lead Laurence Olivier portrays in the film. Emily Bronte.
Okay, so there you have it. So, you know, she actually hit on exactly what happened to me. She watched the movie. They portrayed Heathcliff as this good-looking, handsome, kind of sinister, intriguing hero, and he was anything but that.
And I'll just have to interject here for a second, but it reminds me of Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. I've heard, I was watching a little film clip on that one time, and the man said, why do women love Darcy? He's kind of a butt. He's not... He's really was kind of rude and very short, and they said, what, do women love that? And they kind of thought, that kind of hit a bell with me. I was like, okay, maybe Heathcliff is the same way. He's not just someone who's just going to fall over and do your every little whim. He's not going to fall for the leading lady. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They're hard to get. They're harder to get than the average main character of a book, I guess, or a story.
Yes, I get it. Okay, so I'm going to make a statement to you, and I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree with this statement.
Okay.
Cathy and Heathcliff are as memorable a couple as Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, I will agree with that. And that's, I guess, what I should have said a while ago when you asked me about overall impression of the book. Even though I don't understand the fascination, I'll never forget these characters because they were powerful, memorable characters. They're not cookie-cutter characters that you would just see in any old story anytime. So I will give that to her. Is it Emily Bronte? I get them confused. Charlotte and Emily.
Yeah, Emily.
Emily, I'll give that to her. She was able to write unforgettable characters. Like, if you cannot read this book or watch the movie and ever forget Heathcliff, first of all, that's such a memorable name, and you can never forget Cathy.
That's true. Yeah, I agree. I think that they have such great depths of feeling and emotion that, in my opinion, they are as memorable or great a couple as Romeo and Juliet.
I just think not as many people are familiar with them because, just in my small experience teaching English, Romeo and Juliet usually is required reading. There's a lot of Shakespeare that's required reading, but Wuthering Heights, that's not usually a required reading. And I think that's why, here in the United States anyway, more people can identify with Romeo and Juliet because they had to read it when they were in school.
Sure. Okay. Okay, so now, earlier I kind of cut you off a little bit because you were getting into why do you like this book? And so my next question is, do you think people who like this book are weird?
No, I don't think they're weird. I think they're just fascinated with the story. And it's a good book, and she's a good writer. I'm not saying that, but like you said, it's your top 5. Well, oh my goodness, I think of all the books out there, I'm just trying to figure out how it's like one of your top notch
and
books.
so I honestly, so like I said earlier, after I truly understood what the book was about, and I truly understood that Heathcliff was really and truly a devil. He really is like the devil. He could be the devil, according to this book. And I started questioning what is it I like about this book. So I really kind of started thinking about it, and I just came to the conclusion that a lot of it was because of the setting. Okay, so it's set on the Yorkshire moors, and I love anything in England, of course, and because the characters are so intriguing. So it kind of reminds me like of a soap opera. You got all these, they're all beautiful people. They talk about how pretty Catherine is and how Heathcliff's really good looking. They're beautiful, they're selfish people, and they're all passionate to the point of insanity.
Yes.
So I think really and truly what my fascination with the book is that how intriguing and fascinating the characters are. And she just has a way of writing characters. Like, every single character is so well written. I mean, they're so different. The characters are also different. She just is able to bring to life. You would think these people really existed. I mean, they're so real. She is a master at portraying people and their moods and their trying to say.
And we talked about this before we started the podcast, or it's been a while, how she has a really deep understanding of human nature.
Yes.
So many times in the book, she would talk about, she would describe a character and their feelings. I'm like, wow, that's true. That's how people really think. That's how people really act. That's what people really motivates people. And then we talked about how the Brontes, they were like very shut off from the world. They lived in this, little country cottage. They didn't know a lot of people. Now that's debatable because they did go to school. They went off to school in, was it?
They did go off for periods where they would do some schooling. But
yes, they did go off into it. Where was it? Where, Amsterdam? Or
I cannot remember, but it's reminded me of. It might have been
or
Amsterdam or somewhere.
Brussels?
Yeah, Brussels maybe.
Okay, they did go off to school and they were exposed to other people, and of course they were very widely read. All 3 sisters.
But they also said while they were at school, for the most part, they were like Emily. She actually was miserable, so she came back home at one point.
But I guess my point was to not have been exposed to that many people and not really had lived a very sociable life. Emily, for sure had a really
a grasp
in-depth grasp of human nature.
I totally agree. And even some of the characters that you're sitting there going, really? He really just did that? But in life, people do some crazy things.
Yeah.
So
there was nothing in the book other than the ghost that I'm like, no, that could never happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Most of the stuff in the book, for sure, I feel like was realistic. It definitely could have happened.
Now, if there really is a Heathcliff out there, I'd like to see that person. I don't want to meet him, but I'd like to know. Okay, so one thing I felt like as I was doing the research for this, I felt like that if we need to keep in mind that part of the reason Wuthering Heights seems bizarre to us is because it is a Gothic novel.
Yes.
Okay, so, and I know you've taught literature before. Do you have a kind of pretty good understanding what a Gothic novel is?
Well, it's been so long, and you even read the definition to me again.
Okay, I was just curious what you were going to say, but yeah, I'll read it. It's a genre of literature that combines fiction, horror, death, and at times romance.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I always think of Edgar Allan Poe when I think of Gothic. Of course, I know he's more of a short story guy, But yeah, you're right. I guess Gothic always brings dark images to my mind. You're right. It's always death.
Well, fiction, horror, and death.
Yeah. So basically, fiction, horror, and death. Okay.
So when you combine death and horror in a fictional setting, and then add a little romance in there,
Yes.
you've got yourself a Gothic novel. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about some characteristics of a Gothic novel. Okay, and we're going to talk about how these all play out in Wuthering Heights. Okay, so. Characteristics of a Gothic novel include gloomy, decaying settings, like haunted houses or castles with secret passages, and other mysterious architecture.
You just hit on something why this book probably is fascinating to people, because people are fascinated with things like that. Like you said, anything supernatural.
Yeah,
old.
the gloomy settings.
Yes.
People are fascinated with castles. They always have been.
And that is a huge part of this book is, like you said, the setting, the moors, and of course Wuthering Heights.
So the first one was the gloomy, decaying settings. The next one is supernatural beings, curses or prophecies, damsels in distress, heroes and villains, romance, and intense emotions. Okay. Now we're going to talk about these individually how they're implemented in the book. Okay, so the setting revolves around two houses, which one was Thrushcross Grange, and that was where the rich people lived. Okay, and then the Wuthering Heights is where Cathy and Heathcliff and her brother Henley grew up.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Thrushcross Grange was, like I said, that was the well-to-do family. That was the home of Isabella and Edgar Linton. Okay, and then just real quickly, on page 2, they just did a real brief description of Wuthering Heights, and I just wanted to read this real quick, just so people kind of get an idea of what Wuthering Heights was like, the house, okay? Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's dwelling, wuthering being a significant provincial adjective descriptive of the atmospheric tumult to which its station is exposed in stormy weather. Pure bracing ventilation they must have up there at all times indeed. One may guess the power of the north wind blowing over the edge by the excessive slant of a few stunted firs at the end of the house, and by a range of gaunt thorns all stretching their limbs one way as if craving alms of the sun. So basically the house it was described as a large sprawling mansion, but because of the class of the people who lived there, it was referred to as a farmhouse, is what I learned. So I thought that was interesting. So basically it's a gloomy ancient mansion. It's set on the dark and eerie Yorkshire moors. It's a very desolate, lonely place. So in case you didn't catch it, wuthering means windy.
Okay.
Okay, it just means windy. The very name of the house suggests stormy and violent weather. So even the name, it kind of goes...
You already have the imagery starting with the name of the book. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so as far as heroes and villains, did you see any heroes in the book? I'm curious.
I can't think of any. Maybe there was, but I can't think of any.
That was kind of a trick question.
Maybe who was this told from? The nanny? I can't think of her name.
Yeah.
What is her name?
Gosh, Nellie. I'm going blank today for some reason. Nellie.
In a way,
Nellie
she might come across as heroic because she did not abandon these people.
Oh, that's a
and
good point.
she was watching these kind of evil, almost on the verge of crazy, falling apart people do horrible things to each other. But she could have said, hey, take this job and shove it, And she never did. She stood by him, and she really tried to stay by that little boy. Was it Harrington?
Yes.
She really tried to stay by him. She tried to teach him and do him right. But she hadn't, when Heathcliff claimed him and made him come live with him, that she was powerless. There's nothing she could do. And that was heartbreaking.
And that word, when you said powerless, all through the book, I felt like of all the people in the book, she was the one that maybe had power to save these people from themselves. But I think you're right. I think she was powerless in her position in life to do anything.
She was not a family member. She had no say. So when Heathcliff said, hey, my son's coming to live with me, like you said, that's one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the book, when she has to hand him over to Heathcliff.
Yeah, because you and I both knew, they're getting ready to hand him over to a monster, and there's nothing they can do about it.
She loved him, and she tried to teach him. So to me, she was heroic in the fact that she did stand by the family. She did try to keep everybody as sane. She tried to talk them down from the cliffs, quote unquote, many times. Like Cathy, she tried to talk some sense into these people, but most of them weren't having it.
Right, and I think a lot of it was because of her station in life. She was simply like a maid.
Yes.
Now that Heathcliff was the perfect Gothic villain, he's described as being dark, handsome, mysterious, but he was also depicted as being both complex and highly sinister. And and here's the thing: he had the makings of being a romantic hero, but it never. He just remained a villain. He never
he's
did
like
go
this
that
guy
path.
who was an orphan. Man, that could have been a great success story. He goes from nothing to, he could have become this great gentleman, but he just couldn't recover from all the verbal abuse. And it could have been a great hero story. But
Yeah. Okay, as far as damsels in distress, I feel like we could talk about this all day. Every time you turned a corner, there was a damsel in distress because Heathcliff was ruining their life.
Yeah.
We know Cathy is not the average damsel in distress. She
I
was,
don't see her as a damsel in
don't
distress at
either.
all. She's too hard-headed. She's too independent. She's too...
She was. You're exactly right. She was headstrong. She was selfish. And
Yeah,
she,
I never see her needing help from anybody for
No.
anything.
No, she played the victim sometimes.
She did play the victim
Yeah.
and cry and, oh, woe is me, but really it was just a ploy for attention. She didn't really need help.
Yeah, I mean, she actually fell in love with Heathcliff, but she didn't marry him.
Did she really?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
debatable to me, but if it was a true love, I feel
in
like
her mind, yeah, I believe she did. But once again, we're over in England. We're looking at your stations in life, and she was felt beneath him,
or she felt above him.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She felt above him.
You're right, and she felt like she was doing the right thing by marrying someone who had money. Because she says, "Oh, well, this is where I struggle by marrying
Edgar.
Edgar." Oh, I'll have money and I can take care of Heathcliff. Or is she really just feeling like he's beneath me and this is an excuse and a way to get out? It can be looked at either way, I feel like.
I felt like she thought I can marry Edgar and have money and prestige and a place
Yeah,
in
have
life,
status.
and status, but also get to keep my relationship with Heathcliff. Is how I.
Well,
looked
that's
at
how
it.
the movie portrayed it. She
Yes.
basically wanted her cake and to eat it too. But now this is the movie, not the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, she wanted to have a husband and have the money and the luxury that goes with that and the status, but then hang out with Heathcliff on the side, and
Right.
that's obviously not going to
And
work.
I can see now, just looking back all those years ago, I can see why this was such a controversial book.
Yeah.
And I love it. One of the quotes I read said, Heathcliff and Cathy are so identical in spirit and temperament that at one point Cathy declares, I am Heathcliff. And
That's true.
One of the most famous lines from the book is, I am
forgot
Heathcliff.
about that. Yeah, she said we're so much alike. It's like we're one person, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were. Yeah, it's like they were just the male and female versions of each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's why they were so crazy about each other, because they were so much alike.
Because they loved themselves so much.
Exactly.
The other person was like them, so I'm going to love.
Yeah, it was almost like a form of worship in a way.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so the supernatural beings, we won't go into that real deeply, but there are some ghosts in the book.
Are there more than one?
Well, at the end, whenever Heathcliff dies, I kind of look at it as,
Like his spirit might join
yeah,
Cathy's
in the
spirit.
book, she portrays Cathy as coming back to life to haunt Heathcliff, and then after Heathcliff dies, a little boy says he sees a woman and a man out on the moors, and it's supposed to be Cathy and Heathcliff.
I forgot about the
Yeah.
little boy who saw two.
So
two
so
figures
really,
instead
what
of
I'm
one.
referring to as ghosts are
Yeah.
Cathy and Heathcliff's spirits
Okay.
after death. And I love how in the book, did you notice how every once in a while they'll say no one really knew where he came from?
Yes.
So they kind of give you. It's kind of
Yeah, there's
funny.
definitely a mystery about him from the beginning. We know he was found on the streets of London, but we don't. Was it London?
I believe it was London.
Okay, but
yeah.
we don't know his true
Yeah.
origin. Who his true parents
Yeah,
were.
Heathcliff's actually kind of going crazy at the end of the book, and Nellie is going, we really don't know where he came from. She's beginning to wonder, is he even human? At a point,
right.
she even there. You may have missed it, but there was a sentence in the book that said something about. There was a lot of folklore about vampires and stuff.
Oh, I missed that.
A lot of people had these superstitions about vampires, and so in the back of her mind, she's like, "Is he even?" She's thinking it alludes the reader to think
that he could be a
that,
supernatural
that he's
being.
not even human. Right?
Okay, I totally missed that.
Yeah, and then of course there were so another element of a gothic novel is the curses and prophecies. Well, every time you turn around, they're cursing each other. Heathcliff basically cursed Cathy upon her death. Remember, he says. In effect, he says, "You will not rest as long as I'm living here upon this earth. Haunt me, take any form, just don't leave me here alone." Now, that's
Right.
not necessarily a curse,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of
But it
talk
shows
like
their
that.
belief in life after death and in spirits and things like that.
Yeah, and he was so distraught after Cathy's death that he's like, I don't care if you come back as a ghost and haunt me. At least I'll be with you in some shape or form.
Right. Which goes back to that whole worship thing. I don't know that it's true. I may be jumping ahead of myself. Are we going to talk about if they really loved each other or not?
Yes, we are. But I agree with you. To me, it was almost like they were to the point of self-worship.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next thing was, the last thing, I'm sorry, is romance and intense emotions. And we saw lots of intense emotions.
Yeah, to me, infatuation is a much better word than love when it comes to Cathy and Heathcliff.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that. And, you know, did you notice how they kept saying that Cathy was known for her deep attachments?
Yes.
And that's I take that as another word for infatuation too. Maybe,
Yeah.
a deep attachment. Okay, so it says she was known for her deep attachments towards to the point where she even married another man. And when she did, you know, Heathcliff ran away, and he came back plotting revenge against Cathy's new husband. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the dark. And I also read somewhere it said the dark love triangle between Cathy and Heathcliff and Edgar also gives the novel its gothic feel. Because you always got that triangle.
Yeah, there's always that tension when the three are in the same room, for
Oh,
sure.
sure, yeah. Okay, did you see any themes in the book?
To me, one of the main themes was the difference between love and infatuation.
Okay.
They kept talking about love this, love that, but to me, that's not true love. You know, the way they talked to each other, the way they treated each other, that was more infatuation, and just, it was like a game, you know, who's going to be the winner, who gets who. So that was a theme. And of course, jealousy was throughout it, greed, like you said, revenge. There were several themes that ran throughout the book that provoked the characters to act in certain ways.
Okay, so one of the themes that I saw was just good versus evil.
Yeah.
You know, and then and to me, the book was so much about the power of hate.
Yeah.
And how hate breeds hate. Did you
Yes.
notice that, you know, it just breeds, if you hate.
Yeah, and if it goes unchecked, like you talked about, if hate goes unchecked, what can happen?
Yes, yeah, and you know, to me it was a glimpse of
bitterness.
Yeah, to me it truly is a glimpse of what happens in a person's heart when they just allow themselves to just continually hate
and be bitter
and
dwell on it 24/7.
Yes. And then I was just going to mention, I thought this was interesting. I didn't really look for symbolism in the book. But I did see that there was some symbolism, and it had to do with open and closed doors and windows. And I thought you would think this
No,
interesting.
I missed that. Mm-hmm.
So one person who studied the book, they said that open and closed doors and windows illustrate the different conditions of the characters in the story. It is only at the end of the story where the doors are unlocked and symbolize the freedom of the inhabitants at Wuthering Heights.
Okay, I didn't catch that. And see, I always wonder, you know, people always analyze these classics to
You're
death.
saying exactly what I was getting ready to say. Go ahead.
And it makes me wonder, is that intentional from the author's point, or is it just coincidental?
Somebody's reading into too much.
Or are we trying to grasp for too much? I always, and as you know, I used to teach literature, like I said, and I never said this in front of the kids, but you know, I was like, I'm sure the author's intent, I don't know, but I always wonder,
yes,
did the author really intend half of the stuff we think they did?
Exactly.
Like, were they really that intelligent?
And I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it.
Right.
But I thought they're always saying, okay, this is symbolism. They did this, and I'm thinking, did the author really do that, or is that just something that
or we just read that
speculating?
Into it? Right.
Exactly.
But that is interesting. If the windows in the house, that's true. They were always locked.
Yes.
All the doors were locked throughout the book until the end, and that would make sense to show, because at the end they're free of Heathcliff and Cathy, so they do have some freedom there.
Yes, and I have to tell you, I did give it some thought, thinking, okay, was this really symbolizing, did it really symbolize the state or condition of the character? Well, she did mention a lot. Every time someone would come up to a window or house, she would always say whether the window was locked or unlocked. And then even when Heathcliff dies, his window is open.
Okay.
And so some people say that's symbolism that his soul flew away.
Oh, and that he was
free.
Finally free
He's
from
finally
his
free
own
to
self.
join Cathy.
And that room was always locked where Cathy had stayed, and no one was allowed in there.
Yes,
know?
and so at the end of the book, the visitor that had been the tenant, he comes and he notices for the first time ever the gate's unlocked, and when he goes inside, there's young Cathy and Hareton, and they're in love, and they're finally free of Heathcliff. So there may be something to that.
Emily did intend that one.
Maybe, yeah. But we'll never know.
No.
Okay, so the $1 million question, which this is what we've been waiting for. Do you think Heathcliff truly loved Cathy?
No.
Okay. All right.
Because true love does not treat someone like that. I mean, he the way he spoke to her, the way he treated her. Like you said, I think it was more self-worship. She was so much like him. He almost worshipped her, and it was an infatuation and self-worship. No, I don't. He would have never treated her the way he did. I don't feel if he truly loved her, and vice versa. I don't think she truly loved him.
So, of course, with our background, our definition of love comes from the Bible.
Yeah, it comes from 1 Corinthians 13, and that's where I'm getting my definition of love. Yeah.
Okay, so just quickly, I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7.
Talk about twin moments. We're having a bunch of them.
Yeah. So love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. So you can look at any one of those things I just said.
As you went through the list, I was like, I cannot think of one of those that either one of them did.
No. So they were. If you wanted to say, take these verses and say and do opposite of that, then that's so they I agree. It was now in their life.
So it was not a great romance. It was a great train wreck.
Yes, thank you. That was awesome, Joy. So. Maybe in their minds, they grew up without parents, and in their mind they didn't know what true love was.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They're not going by our definition of love. That's probably all they knew. And to Emily Bronte, I don't know what her faith was or anything.
And I can't remember if I was going to get into this later or not, but in my mind, this is what I just kept thinking. You've got an orphan boy who, no telling what he saw when he was little, he's found on the street, he comes back. All he knew in life was the love of this little girl. And next thing you know, and her father, who truly did love him.
Yeah, that's all he had was the girl
all
and the
he
dad.
had in life was the girl and the dad. The dad dies, and then Cathy's taken away from him because of her brother.
Yes.
And so, think about that.
And then she, quote unquote, betrays him by marrying...
Right, so
Edgar.
So he, in his mind, he had nothing. Now, did he handle it correctly?
No, but was he skilled to handle it correctly?
Exactly,
no.
And that's what I kept thinking.
He didn't have the education or skills.
Yeah,
I'm sure. And this time
thinking,
period
if someone
to
had taken the only thing in life that you had that mattered to you, how would you react?
Oh yeah, I'm going to cut Heathcliff some slack. Heathcliff, I'm for you, buddy. I just think you did. I just feel like if this were a true story, he didn't have the resources to deal with the things that were thrown at him like we do today.
Yes,
but. Man, he didn't handle it very well.
No, and I just love how Emily took that situation and took his background and just fully developed him into that great villain that he
showing
is.
What can happen when there's no love, when you're not around people who
it's
love
almost
you.
like if circumstances are just right and the perfect storm, this is what could happen.
Yeah, it truly creates a tortured soul.
Yes, so glad you're my partner on the show. You say so many awesome things.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this is my last question. Why do you think, and I really did give this some thought, why do you think the author created Linton, to be so selfish and pitiful and sickly? So before you answer, I need to tell our listeners, Linton is Heathcliff's son, but he treated his wife so horribly, Isabella. He married Isabella. And
who is Edgar's sister,
and he treated her so horribly that she finally ran away, and she was pregnant, has this child, and then she dies about 12 years, you see 12 or so?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. She dies later while he's young. And then next thing you know, Heathcliff's demanding this child be brought back to him. But Joy's going to describe, I want you to describe for our listeners, what was he like?
Oh my! Okay, so am I jumping ahead if I say he is absolutely my least favorite character?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Linton is my least favorite character. He's whiny. He's a sissy. He's just
he's pitiful.
He has pitiful. No masculinity about him at all. He's a poor, pitiful character, and to think he is Heathcliff's son. He's nothing like Heathcliff.
I know. This is just curiosity. Why do you think Emily, the author, why did she make Heathcliff's son to be the complete opposite of
I
Heathcliff.
think because she wanted to continue that pattern of him hating and despising everyone. Well, he's going to hate a weakling. He's going to despise someone who's not strong. You know, Heathcliff to me despises people who are weak.
He does. He admits that.
He
hates
is all
weakness.
about strength and people who will stand up for themselves. And Linton is not that person. So to me, it gets to carry on his pattern of hating and despising people. Well, she had to give him a reason to hate and despise his own son because he was weak.
See, I could almost see...
And that was health too, not just mentally, but physically he was weak as well.
Yes, he was physically weak, he was mentally weak, and socially he was just... Like, you see these shows sometimes where they have this spoiled rich brat that can't lift a finger. That was Linton. But he also had the physical problems as well.
Yes, but
he
I
was
never
very
understood
sickly.
what Cathy saw in him. She was just lonely. There was no one else to talk to.
I think she felt sorry for him.
I think he was kind of like her little... She could play nurse to him and doctor him and...
And see, I felt like Emily looked at...
Now, this is Cathy, Catherine's daughter.
Yes, this would be not the Kathy, but Kathy's daughter.
Cathy's daughter.
I felt like Emily sitting there in her little writer's chair, and she's thinking about the character of Linton, Heathcliff's son, and she's thinking, wow, if I could make him the most pathetic person in the book, things I could have Heathcliff do in this book, I could make his character become reach new depths.
I think she succeeded in creating one of the most pitiful characters in all of literature.
Yes, and just to be able to have Heathcliff and him butting head, to showcase his weakness against Heathcliff's evil strengths.
And then just to add insult to injury, have his son marry Catherine's daughter, Cathy.
Yes,
because I'm sure now Heathcliff did want that because of the money. But if the money weren't involved, I'm sure that would just absolutely kill him. Like my little poor pathetic son marrying Catherine's daughter, Cathy, the woman I could never have. This poor little creature gets to have the other version of Cathy.
Right?
Is that not making sense?
No. Yeah. So you just answered that last. I thought that was my last question, but you just answered it. Who was your least favorite character?
Yeah,
and you basically just
Linton.
Yeah, I agree.
Beyond
100%.
a shadow of a doubt. You too.
And that's one of those books, usually you're like, oh, this is my favorite person, but this was a hard book for me to pick a favorite.
I know.
Did you
If
have
I had
a
to
favorite?
pick a favorite, it would probably have to be the one we cannot think of her title. She's the
Nellie Dean.
Dean.
I
Because
think
she was the only, and she was the reliable narrator, of course.
She's
so we
kind of
couldn't
like a
really-
lady's maid, is how I looked at it.
Yes.
She was like a personal maid to Cathy.
And I just see her, she was the only, obviously she was the narrator because she's the only sane person in the whole book, for the most part.
She was.
Yeah, but she was the only reasonable, level-headed person truly capable of love, I feel like, in the whole book. And she had to be because she was the narrator.
Okay. Well,
so we would believe her.
Yeah. She had to have a sane person so that against the backdrop of all this insanity. Yeah, I agree.
But I will say this, and we talked about this and I never did it, but I love the fact that they gave the house the name Wuthering Heights. And one thing about the word heights, I'm scared of heights. And I think of how my stomach flips and I'm uneasy. Even the title, it's like, okay, you're on a height and it's windy, so it's kind of unstable. Even the title gives me kind of an uneasy feeling, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But I always
it's a very fitting title.
Yes, but I just thought it'd be so cool if what if everybody named their home? What if everybody named their house? And I've been racking my brain because I have a tiny little house, in a little city. It's not like it's this big mansion out in the country, but I want to come up with a name for my house. But what would you name your house?
Oh
Do
my
you know?
gosh! Well, I have a big meadow in my in front of my house.
Angie's house is it's in the woods, and she has a big meadow.
Yeah, and
it is a 2-story. It's not, nothing like Wuthering Heights, but it's very nice and peaceful and pretty out here. I think you should name your house.
That's funny you said that because when I was thinking of names for my daughter, I came across the name Ainsley. Well, Corby didn't like it, but I looked up the word Ainsley, and it means my own meadow.
Ooh.
So I think I would name it like Ainsley Place.
Oh, now that's cool.
Yeah, so I have to actually
I
thought of that before. Believe
I
it or
might
not.
just call mine La Pequeña, the little one.
Oh,
And it's in Spanish, and I like to speak Spanish, so mine might just be La Pequeña because it doesn't really have anything special about it.
Oh,
but I
do the cute house.
But I think your house definitely deserves a name, and I think we need to call our mom. We need to come up with a name for our mom's house because it's kind of old and it's a little creepy and a little creaky. And I think we need to come up with a name with that. I think everybody should be
maybe
required to name
we're-
their house.
Yeah, I think we may start a trend. So anyone listening to this, come up with a name for your house, and then
Tell us why.
Tell us what you named your house and why.
Yeah.
And leave us a message. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, please do that. That would be so much fun. Tell us a little bit about your house and why, what you named it.
Okay, so we're done with the question part of it, and I just
Okay.
wanted to just read a little something for our listeners. For those of you who don't know anything about the Bronte family, they're probably one of the most famous literature families in the history of literature, well, British literature anyway, I should say. So I just real quickly, this will give, and you kind of touched a little bit earlier on how these sisters. They're famous sisters who all wrote famous books, even though Emily really only wrote Wuthering Heights, and then her sister really only had the one.
And Charlotte had Jane Eyre.
Yeah, and I want to mention that here in just a second.
Okay.
But so basically, the Bronte family. Here's a little history. The mother and father were Patrick and Maria Bronte, and they had 6 children. Okay, they had Maria. This is in order of their birth: Maria, Elizabeth, Charlotte, Branwell, Emily, and Anne. So the mother died when the oldest Maria was only 7 years old.
Right.
So look at all these little kids with no mommy. Okay,
6 kids, young kids.
6 children. Yes, and they're all young when the mom dies. Okay, so Charlotte and Emily and Anne wrote some of the most iconic British novels known today. They were inspired by the windswept moors that surrounded their home. Much of their writing concentrates on the intimate details of the landscapes. Yorkshire, in a sense, becomes a main character in their books. All of their works contain heavy Gothic influences, which were very popular in the Victorian era. And that explains why they wrote these Gothic novels, because that's what was popular at the time. Yeah. So Anne's Tenant of Wildfell Hall and Charlotte's Jane Eyre were both instant critical successes, but not so with Emily's Wuthering Heights. It was seen as unnatural, and
even though they thought a man wrote it, they still thought
they still thought
it was unnatural and too violent.
Yes.
And too disturbing, even when they thought a man had written it.
Yeah, so even though they thought there's a great book, it's a good book, a man wrote, but it's too shocking. They said it was seen as unnatural, far too shocking in its bleak and violent depiction of Catherine and Heathcliff's love. So so here's a timeline, and once I read this timeline, Joy, it really made me understand.
Right, and I will say, the Bronte family went through so much sickness and death. I could see why it would be embedded. It would be a theme throughout the book. Sickness and dying, for sure. And for some reason, the Kennedy family just went through my head. Yeah.
Like all these tragic things happened in their life. Okay, so here's the timeline. In September of 1821, Maria Bronte dies of tuberculosis. 1825, Maria dies of tuberculosis. 1825, Elizabeth dies of tuberculosis. So 2 girls in 1 year. 1842, Branwell dies. 1846.
Which that was more of alcoholism, I think.
Yes,
I don't
that
think
was
he
their brother that died
tuberculosis.
of alcohol. Yes. Okay, so then in 1846 was a publication of poems by Kerr, Ellis, and Acton Bell. That was the pseudonyms,
their pseudonyms
for the girls so that they could get some poems published. Okay. 1847, Jane Eyre is published. 1847, Agnes Grey and Wuthering Heights are published. 1848, Tenant of Wildfell Hall is published. So those 3 great works of literature, Jane Eyre, Agnes Grey, Wuthering Heights, Tenant of Wildfell Hall, there's 4 actually. They're all published within a few years of each other, okay? I'm sorry, I said Branwell died earlier. That was Aunt Branwell that died. But now, 1848, Branwell dies, okay? 1848, Emily dies. 1849, Anne dies. 1854, okay, and they all died of tuberculosis, by the way.
Yeah, didn't they say the average age to live in that town was like 25?
It was, yeah.
And a lot of it was, they didn't realize this, and it was the water. The water supply ran through a cemetery in town, and they didn't bury the bodies deep like they do now. They said they'd put them on top and just put a heavy stone on them a lot of times.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
Yes, they said the water was contaminated, but they figured it out. Half the town was dead before they figured it out.
Okay.
And so I know they were dying of tuberculosis, but they said that contaminated water was really the reason so many people were dying so young. So if you lived around there, there wasn't much hope of living. Man, if you lived to make it to 30, that was saying something in that damn time.
Yeah, it was
in that city.
It's sad, but they just kind of expected to die young. So so Charlotte's the only one that's left. She sat there. She's literally watched her mom and all her sisters pass away. And so in 1854, she actually does get married. Charlotte does, and then she dies a year later. Okay, so
Did she die on childbirth?
she died of tuberculosis and complications in pregnancy. So
Okay.
it was both. Okay, and then in 1861, the dad outlives the entire family, and then he dies. Patrick
Can you
Bronte.
imagine being that father, watching your
Yeah.
wife and 6 children die?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, I really don't even think we need to really get into this too deeply because we've pretty much explained it, but I said, do you think the tragic deaths of the sisters affected their writing?
Well, yes, definitely. They've already lost 2 siblings by the time they're writing. Yeah, and then, of course, their brother with the alcoholism they're having. That was horrible.
Yeah.
That's what the one book the other sister wrote was about, and what it's like to have an alcoholic in the family.
That's what I heard. I'd like to
Yeah.
read that book. So
Is
and
that the
I
tenant
have
of
to-
Wildfell Hall?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I have to say this. I kept thinking, okay, they think this book's unnatural. They think it's disturbing. Well, okay, you sit there and watch all your sisters die, and you didn't grow up with a mom. I mean, I'm thinking, she might have had a little touch of psychosis. I don't
Yeah,
know.
seriously.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can't remember how many people.
I mean, who else would write characters like Heathcliff and Cathy that had
Yeah.
been through?
Maybe that was her working out all of her anger and emotions through her writing of having to lose her
That could've
siblings
been,
at such a young age.
It could have been therapy because even Charlotte, after they all died, there are some articles that she actually said because she kept writing after they all
Yeah.
died. And she said, really, it was therapeutic for me to keep writing.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, so Joy, I forgot to tell you to be thinking of a word rating. So you, this might be
okay.
hard for you on the spot.
Ooh,
But I
yeah.
did come up with a word rating. I don't think you're gonna get it.
Okay,
but-
yeah, I'm trying to think. Wuthering Heights, Moors, Heathcliff. I have no idea.
This was a hard one.
Okay.
I actually picked Penistone Crags.
Oh,
Penistone
okay.
Crags is how you say it. So that was, I think, one of their favorite places to go.
That was where Cathy
meet,
and
or they could
Heathcliff
see
would
it.
go, where they could be alone and
I
spend
think
time
so.
together.
They could either see it in the distance or they met there. I can't
Yeah.
remember. So how many Penistone Crags? Before you give me your word rating, I had a couple funny things I wanted to read.
Okay.
Okay, so I had forgotten that Joy had actually had this on. She got Wuthering Heights on Audible, and I
Yeah.
forgot you told me you had it. So I found a free audiobook online, and it was not the greatest audiobook. So I'm not going to recommend it. But here were some of the comments. You know how people will comment on the internet about the audiobook?
Yeah.
So I wanted to read these comments because they're actually pretty funny. So Linda H says, "This book is excellent for those who declare it boring. It's one of the best books ever written. I've read it many times." Mark H says, "This is a female masterwork. No male can read it." I thought, okay. What's up, bro? Said, "I hated every single second reading this book in English class." Jonathan V said, "It's so long and boring, but I must listen in order to do my summer project." Suzanne said, "I hate to say this, but Cathy was a bit of an a-hole." Monica says, "I'm not liking this book at all. This is not love, it's obsession. I feel no love at all. This is worse than Romeo and Juliet." Notorious PhD said, "I hate this book so much." And then somebody said, "Why is this pedantic book considered a masterpiece?" And I looked up the word pedantic, and I still can't understand what it means. And then somebody named M. Wafu said, "It's me, Cathy." I thought that was funny. She went, "It's me, Cathy." Okay, and the last one. "I have a test on this tomorrow, and I've slept through every class. 2 times speed is my new best friend." I'm sorry. There was one more. Joseph says, they said, "Joseph sounds like Homer Simpson." My gosh, he is Homer Simpson. So anyway, I was cracking up when I was reading those. So now, go ahead and give me how many Penistone Crags do you give this book?
I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.
Okay.
Just because the setting was amazing. She really was a master with setting. You could see the house, you could smell it. I mean, she was really good at describing sights, smells, sounds, all that stuff. And then, of course, the characters are unforgettable. And like you said, she really had insight into human nature and how people really think and act and feel. And she was a master at all that. So even though, honestly, I did not really enjoy reading the book. I appreciate how good she was at writing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you just didn't like
I appreciate the art, the
storyline
the mastery behind it.
Yeah.
But the story itself was dark and depressing and evil and kind of gloomy and depressing.
Can you see why I saved it for October?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. It's dark and gloomy and yeah.
Okay, so
Got
you're
a little
giving
hint
it
of
4.
evil. But I am giving
Okay.
it a 4, which honestly there were times I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot listen to this 5 more seconds. But now that I'm through with it and thinking about the characters and the setting and what a
Yeah.
good writer she is, I'll
Yeah.
definitely give it a 4.
Okay.
4 Pennington Crags.
Okay, well, I'm giving it 5 because I just felt like her character development was out of this world, and personally, I just feel like she has a genius for writing. When people called her a genius, I agree. I
All
think
the
she was
Brontes. Well, I'll
yeah.
say all of them. I've only read, and now that I think about it, I don't think I've read Jane Eyre. I've just seen the
I
movie,
haven't
but I'm
either.
assuming Jane Eyre is just as good as Wuthering
It's-
Heights as far as the writing style.
Well, it stood the test of time. I mean, it's still considered one of the greats. So, yeah. Okay, so instead of doing trivia, we're almost done, by the
Okay.
way. I don't know how long this is running today, but
we're at 51 minutes.
oh, a little long, but that's okay.
Still under an hour.
Yeah. Okay, so instead of doing trivia, we're going to play a little game. Who said that?
Oh no.
Okay, so I'm going to say a quote from
But
the
you have
book.
to do it in their accent, I think.
Oh boy, I don't know if I can do that, but it's who said that?
Okay.
It's a quote from the book.
Okay.
Okay. Number 1. I am now quite cured of seeking pleasure in society, be it country or town. A sensible man ought to find sufficient company in himself.
That is the tenant who was renting the one I can never think of the name.
Thrushcross
Grange from Heathcliff.
Very good.
Yeah.
It was Lockwood.
Because Lockwood. Because
Yeah.
once he had a few dealings with Heathcliff, he's like, yeah, I'm okay. I don't need to visit with people. I'm okay.
Yeah, like once he had a little taste of Heathcliff, he would rather be alone in
He's
solitude.
like, yeah, I don't need to be visiting.
Yeah. Okay, number 2. It was not the thorn bending to the honeysuckles, but the honeysuckles embracing the thorn.
So they were talking about when Catherine got hurt and she was staying at
Thrushcross
Grange,
Uh-huh.
and she is, she's the demanding, prickly one. But they were all bowing down to her. But I'm going to say it was the. How come I can't think of names?
The maid, the lady's maid.
Yes,
Nellie.
Nellie.
Yeah,
I believe it was
Nellie
Nellie
Dean.
talking about Catherine staying over there.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Treachery and violence are spears pointed at both ends. They wound those who resort to them worse than their enemies.
I think that's a woman.
Uh-huh.
Is it Catherine?
No.
Or her daughter?
No, it was actually Isabella,
Oh, okay.
Heathcliff's wife.
Oh.
And because there's a scene where
That's right.
Where Henley wants her to help him kill Heathcliff.
Yes.
And she's saying no. Treachery and violence are spears pointed at both ends. In other words, if I do
Yeah.
something, I'm probably going to get stuck
Yeah.
myself. Right.
Yeah, you play. He who plays with fire gets burned by fire, basically.
Exactly. Okay, number 4. Do I want to live? Would you like to live with your soul in the grave? I didn't do a very good voice there. Do I want to live? Would you like to live with your soul in the grave?
I guess that's got to be Heathcliff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So once Cathy dies, he feels
Yeah.
like his soul is already in the grave.
Yeah.
In my soul and in my heart, I'm convinced I'm wrong.
That's Catherine.
That is Cathy.
When she's talking about getting married,
Yes, she knows she's
not marrying Heathcliff.
She's going to marry Edgar, and she
Yeah.
knows in her heart she's wrong. Okay. If he loved with all the powers of his puny being, he couldn't love as much in 80 years as I could in a day.
I think that's Heathcliff.
That's Heathcliff.
Yeah.
He's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same.
That's Catherine.
That's Cathy.
Yeah.
So here we got all these very intense emotions.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. I have to remind myself to breathe, almost to remind my heart to beat.
That's Heathcliff.
That's Heathcliff.
Yep.
Number 9. Any relic of the dead is precious if they were valued living.
Is that Cathy?
No.
No.
That
I remember that line from the book.
That was Nellie. She had kept
Oh,
a
okay.
letter from Isabella.
Okay.
And she said it was precious because, she was close to her
Okay.
in life. Okay. All right. And the last one, number 10. Nellie, I am Heathcliff.
Oh, that's Catherine.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is the reading of our favorite passages.
that usually the first and last paragraph, I know I've said this before, sometimes those are the best ones. The beginning and the ending are some of the most beautiful writing, and that's how it is in this case.
Yeah, I agree. And I had told Joy the other day that my favorite ending probably of any book I've ever read is in this book. It's my favorite. I love the ending. I don't know why.
It's funny you said that because one of the books I want to do is Little Big Man, and I think that's probably one of my favorite endings. That,
Oh, okay.
A River Runs Through It and Little Big Man are two of my favorite endings of all time, and that's what makes those books so memorable to me. And this is a good ending. I do like this ending.
Okay, so the passage I'm going to read.
sorry.
I'm sorry, I just have to look at this real quick. Okay, so it's on page 152, and it's okay. When Heathcliff calls for Linton, and they have to take Linton to Heathcliff. They don't have any choice. Okay, what to me, Bronte is a master at building suspense. Okay, so in this passage I'm going to read, you are literally on the edge of your seat, knowing that this child is getting ready
to go to his monster dad.
And I just feel like she's a master. And this is the part of the book
she does do a good job of playing up our sympathies for these characters, knowing what they're about to get into.
I was literally cringing when I was reading this passage because I was so worried for Linton, even though he's not a likable character. Yeah. Now, it's very long, so it may sound choppy because I'm not going to read the whole passage, so it may sound like it's not fluid.
Okay.
But here we go. My father, they've just told Linton he's getting ready to go to his father.
Yeah.
My father, he cried in strange perplexity. Mama never told me I had a father. Where does he live? I'd rather stay with Uncle. He lives a little distance from the Grange, I replied, just beyond those hills. Not so far, but you may walk over here when you get hearty, and you should be glad to go home and see him. You must try to love him as you did your mother, and then he will love you. But why didn't Mama speak to me about him? Persevered the child. She often talked of Uncle, and I learned to love him long ago. How am I to love Papa? I don't know him. Oh, all children love their parents, I said. Your mother perhaps thought you would want to be with him if she mentioned... Your mother perhaps thought you would want to be with him if she mentioned him often to you. Let's make haste. It's such a beautiful morning. I attempted to persuade him of his naughtiness of showing reluctance to meet his father. Still, he obstinately resisted any progress towards dressing, and I had to call for my master's assistance in coaxing him out of bed. Is Wuthering Heights a pleasant place to live, as Thrushcross Grange, he inquired, turning to take a last glance into the valley when a light mist mounted and formed. And what is my father like, he asked. Is he as young and handsome as Uncle? He's as young, said I, but he's black hair and eyes and looks sterner, and he is taller and bigger altogether. He'll not seem to you so gentle and kind at first, perhaps because it's not his way. Still, mind you be frank and cordial with him, and naturally he'll be fonder of you than any uncle, for you are his own. Black hair and eyes, mused Linton. I can't fancy him. Then I'm not like him much, am I? Not much, I answered, not a morsel, I thought, surveying with regret the white complexion and slim frame of my companion, and his large, languid eyes. His mother's eyes, save that, unless a morbid touchiness kindled them a moment, they had not a vestige of her sparkling spirit. How strange that he should never come see Mama and me, he murmured. Has he ever seen me? If he has, I must have been a baby. I remember not a single thing about him.
Yeah, sad.
And, yeah, it's I wish I could read the whole passage, but it's so lengthy. But it's really good at building the suspense. Okay, so Joy's going to read. So you decided on reading the last.
Yeah, I really do like that last paragraph. It's really pretty.
Yeah.
My walk home was lengthened by a diversion in the direction of the kirk. When beneath its walls I perceived decay had made progress, even in 7 months. Many a window showed black gaps deprived of glass, and slates jutted off here and there beyond the right line of the roof, to be gradually worked off in coming autumn storms. I sought and soon discovered the 3 headstones on the slope next to the moor, the middle one gray and half buried in heath, Edgar Linton's only harmonized by the turf and moss creeping up its foot, Heathcliff's still bare. I lingered around them under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth.
Okay, that's pretty much does it for today's podcast. In closing, I just want to say that I feel like Emily Bronte was a world-class writer who had a genius for developing interesting and complex characters. She was a master at making the characters come to life on the page, and her non-traditional portrayal of love and hate make this one of the most memorable books of our time. And thank you, and hope you join us next time on Twin Talk.